Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 4-0 undefeated Dark Magician deck profile. Yeah! Um, Last night my locals went undefeated 4-0. Most of my games were actually 2-0 wins, except for my last game, which was against Kashtira. Kashtira actually ended up going into a game three, and that's just because game one he made his, they made their typical. He won the dice roll and he made the typical Arise Heart Baron uh, board, and I drew four bricks and only one actual playable card. So I just scooped that, and we just went to games two and three. And in game two on that one, he made a Zeus and tried swinging into Dragoon to get it off the field. And then I activated my own card, negated it to get the 1,000 attack point boost, killed his thing, and then proceeded to turn swing for win. Um, but yeah, no. So this is, once you guys see it, it's actually a pretty just standard build. I feel like I got very lucky in my matchups and in plays. Um, the only deck I did not see last night that I also typically have a lot of trouble against. I usually have a lot of trouble against Kashtira, but I also have trouble against Branded Despia. But you'll see the main deck tech I have for that as well. Also, not a lot of people were playing. I consider the locals around here to actually be a little bit more competitive, even though I know everybody says that. But with half the decks being Kashtira and then a bunch of the Rika Plans, Trap Tricks, and Despia decks in there, like no one's playing the sub tier stuff. So let's just get right into this and give you guys a little bit of preview on what's inside the different decks here. All right, we'll start off with all of our Dark Magician monsters. Two Dark Magicians, three is too bricky, one just not enough, especially with today, everybody banishing everything and ripping cards out of graveyards, and just two is good because even if you open up both and you get a Secrets of Dark Magic, you can still fuse them together to make like a Dark Magicians or or anything else that can go in your hand. Or if you can somehow get one out, make a make it Imduk, and then fuse into Dragoon or Dragon Knight. One Magician's Rod, and the reason for one is because with what with everything else that we're playing in here, you only really need one normal summon for the deck, and then when you get it out, you swap it out for Artemis, then you can just recur it back on future turns. So you really don't need more than one. You could play two, but I feel two might be just a little bit more bricky. And when you guys see what else I'm playing in here, we don't need to be building that much of a brick house. Also, I apologize in advance for the ridiculous quality and the glare, but this is just the only camera I got. Three souls, pretty self-explanatory. Get Dumps Dark Magician in the grave, so you can set up your Eternal Soul and Dark Magical Circle plays, as well as um, setting up your Soul Servant for the draws. Two Illusion of Chaos, because I play two prep. So that way, then you have a total of four Illusion of Chaos essentially. And if you open up two Illusion of Chaos, that's bricky. So That's why I don't do three. And I do two prep just because, again, with everything else that's in here, there really wasn't a room for a third. So that's just how I had to play it. Um, and when I posted in the group last night, a lot of people were asking, "Oh, what do you did you play Red Eyes Fusion? Did you play uh Branded?" Um, well, that leads me to the next section here, which I'm kind of skipping around a little bit, but as you can as you can imagine, boom, the Red Eyes Fusion, and I already know I'm gonna get a lot of people being like, "Why you play two Red Eyes Black Dragon? That's so ridiculous. You're just playing so many bricks." Well, yes and no. Um, yes, in a sense that it is very bricky, but no, in a sense that if you go Red Eyes Fusion on your first turn, and you just have Dragoon out, and then they out that Dragoon, how are you gonna get back into another one? Are you gonna somehow magically get it back from grave with Celine? Are you going to, you know, play a monster born of the deck to get it? No. Doing the second Red Eyes Fusion to then get another Dragoon for a two pop, I think, is actually saved me in my first game against Traptrix. And the Wyvern, because you use the Insight, discard the Wyvern. Wyvern also saved me uh, a few times because people don't look at the Wyvern and go, oh, you know, or they just look at it and go, oh, that's just the Red Eyes monster for the Insight. Well, it's also a way to revive back Dragoon during your end phase. And then I do 3 fusions and 2 insights. Again, just because the deck space is very limited, and I figured playing 5 copies of Red Eyes Fusion would be enough, and it ended up working out pretty well. So then the Dark Magician spells and traps that I played: 2 Circle, 3 Soul Servant, 1 Secrets, 1 Salvation, which is essentially just 3 Eternal Souls. Because if you noticed, in this deck, we're unfortunately not playing Dark Magician Girl, and that is because she, in of herself, is a brick. Because there's no way for us to just dump her to the grave or recycle her outside of Illusion of Chaos, and it just, if you end up drawing like if you end up drawing a hand of DM, Red Eyes, Dark Magician Girl, Eternal Soul, and like some other random card, that's 3 bricks in your hand, and you know that's not exactly ideal. I know we lose the draw power from the Soul Servant, but a lot of times all you need is to just cherry pick 1 card, you know. I play. Sorry about that. Had to stop for lunch. I believe I was last saying about the three Soul Servants in the deck, because they're your main searcher for secrets, Dark Magic Circle, basically anything with DM in its name, and you just put it right to the top and continue on setting up your control board. After you get Dragoon out. I put 2 circles in here, just because a lot of times, like at my locals, people will just get rid of the 1 circle, and then, there goes your whole control aspect, and then you have to rely on just Dragoon, and that's not exactly, the best option. I run the 1 secrets just because I primarily use it for a combat trick, because what you do is you go Dragoon, and then if you have a bunch of other bodies out, as long as you have DM on field or in hand, you can attack with Dark Magician, Secrets, Dark Magician with something else, get an extra attack in, and then if you have Eternal Soul out, you bring back Dark Magician and get even more damage in. So it's like that Dark Magician just did, over 5,000 damage just by himself. The reason why, and then the same reasoning why I have two circles is why I have two Eternal Souls and then the one Salvation. Salvation is essentially just like a searcher, so it's a deck thinner. I mean, you can play without it, but I like playing with it because it's also an extra card to send with the Magician Souls. Because if you do Salvation, like say you get a hand of, you know, Salvation and Eternal Soul and a Magician Soul, then you play out Salvation, search for the other Eternal Soul, uh, and then bring out Magician Soul, sending Dark Magician, and then you send Salvation and the one you have on field, so that way then they don't know that you have a Magician Soul on field. And sorry, Magician Soul, not the Eternal Soul on field. Then you can set your other one so they don't know exactly what it is, so they're a little more hesitant to use that back row removal on something that they can't see. Whereas, if you have a magical circle, they'll be more likely to target that. Um, the next integral part of the deck is, and what I consider to be a real like double-edged sword, is Secret Village. Um, Dragoon is the ultimate spellcaster in terms of effects, not necessarily attack and defense because that's that guy's job. Um, but Dragoon and Secret Village, unless they have a kaiju, or if they go, if like against the Kashtira guy, he went Fenrir, and then he had to go Kashtira Scareclaw, so that he could out my Dragoon because the Scareclaw Kashtira negates a monster effect whenever your guy attacks. So then he does. So then he did um, Scareclaw, Fenrir attack, target banish Dragoon, which turns off Secret Village, and then he went back into his other plays, and then the Primeval Planet blows up the Secret Village and gets that off the field. Um, so in this deck, we're essentially playing 5 copies of it. I'll only run 2 metaverses because I only own 2 metaverses. So, but I also feel like a third one would have been super clunky, and that's why I'm okay with running the terraforming 2 metaverses and then 2 secret villages because, while you want to see it, you don't want to see too many of it, in your opening hand. Up next, I have some of the more like utility cards, the board breakers. Super Poly was fantastic in my Dragon Links matchup. Also, it's situationally good if they do, if they kind of set up the wrong board with Kashtira. You can go into a Mud Dragon. Allure of Darkness, just because it's card draw, because everything in this deck is dark. I don't think there's a single light monster. The only non-dark monster in this deck is Red Eyes Wyvern, and he's a wind, so he's not banishable by Bestials. Just keep that in mind, everybody, because I actually had somebody try to do that last night, and I'm like, nope, he is a wind type. Uh, the next little section here is because I absolutely hate, but I used to hate playing Red Eyes Fusion, right? I was not a fan of it. I was on the branded engine for a long time, but I, after playing branded engine a bunch, either I wasn't using it correctly or it just seemed like the branded engine on its own does better when you stay in archetype and don't try to like spider into other things, because that deck seems like it's very uh, limited on what it plays and on what it uses, that there's not really much room to add, like, the Dark Magician engine, or, running Branded and Red Eyes Fusion, because then you're just running too much stuff in one deck. Um, but Red Eyes Fusion loses hard to Ash Blossom. So in the main deck, I run I run these five, the three crossouts just to name Ash Blossom, and then Called By. Called By was actually very pivotal in my Kashtira game because I got it and then they tried a D shifter and I was like, nope, Called By the Grave. So it stopped them from being able to do their everything gets banished shenanigans. And then actually in the third game, he D-shifted again, but it ended up hurting him because he didn't have any materials in Grave, and he had done some like weird siding, and he actually sided out the wrong things. So, and then the last two things I'm playing is just one Magical Eyes Fusion, just to get, uh, in case you don't see a Red Eyes Fusion, Magical Eyes Fusion, you can, you know, fuse for another Dragoon. Uh, and I actually rarely saw this. And by the time I did see it, I already had my two Dragoons out, so the only thing he was really going to be able to bring out was either Master of Chaos or the Dark Magicians. And then by that point, I was already, you know, winning. And Instant Fusion is a little sneaky little tech card that only worked once last night. But that's just because I got essentially a dead hand, and they also kind of didn't get the greatest. But when I go over the extra deck, you will see what exactly we played. Alrighty, moving on to the extra deck. Obviously, we got the MVP, Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. He really doesn't need an explanation, but for those of you who don't know what he does, he cannot be targeted by card effects from either player, so you can't like play him out and throw a bunch of equip cards on him and make him the ultimate engine of destruction. Um, and he also cannot be destroyed by card effects, which includes our very own Eternal Soul. That card that we play that is the ultimate double-edged sword that, when it dies, we die. So, great feeling on that one. Then the one Dragon Knight, one Dark Magicians. Um, I've been considering taking out the Dark Magicians only because we don't run the Dark Magician Girl, but it's good in the uh, like against the Despia matchups, because if they get out like Cartesia or Quem and you have Dark Magician out, then you can go Super Poly and go into Dark Magicians and essentially take away one of their like key combo pieces. Master of Chaos. I feel like Master of Chaos is mostly used for combat tricks, and that's honestly what I used him for. Because if you go like Dark Magician and Illusion of Chaos in hand, go to Master Chaos, bring back out Dark Magician. So then again, if you have Dark Magician on field during battle phase, that's 25, and then this is 3k, and then bring back Dark Magician with Master Chaos to then do another 2500 for a total of 8k, like right on the dot. So it's almost like they planned it. Guardian Chimera, I only used it one time, and that was to essentially save to blow up some of the Rika cards, um, because he just had I attributed away his stuff and then blew them up with Chimera and then swung. So that's pretty much what happened there. The two super poly targets are Mud Dragon and Garura. Um, Mud Dragon, Mud Dragon doesn't really work against Kashtira unless they kind of botch their botch their plays, or don't necessarily play around Super Poly. Um, that was something that actually happened a lot last night. Was that people didn't play around Super Polys, they didn't play around uh, the other hand traps that I had in the side deck. Um, so now the secret tech card, Instant Fusion with Millenniumizer Strict, because if you're not going to go um, into your Red Eyes Fusion plays, then Instant Fusion becomes a one card anti Ash, where or anti anything and any hand trap. It will stop any hand trap. This I actually used against a oh god, I forget which one it was, but it was the one that can target the on-field effects and blow them up because I had him out, and then I went to go into Dark Magical Circle. I think it's Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion. Um, they tried to go into that, and I stole it with him, and just I was like, hey, thanks for the free monster, which then allowed me to go into Relinquished Anima, because it is a level one monster. So a level so it allows you to go into anima to then, if they, put it in the wrong space, steal it with anima, and then you essentially took out two of their cards for the price of one instant fusion. You know. Then we've got we've got Imduk, because Imduk is one of your dragon creatures to make Dragoon off of secrets, or you can, um, again, if they misplay and they put monsters in the wrong spot, he actually has an effect. I hope we can all see this on the camera without being blinded by the light. Well, okay. So when he battles a monster that he points to, it automatically destroys them before even damage calculation. So he helps clear boards, and then if you have him and Dark Magician on the side of the field, he attacks at something, Dark Magician attacks, and then you can go him and Dark Magician, Secrets of Dark Magic, into Dragoon or Dragon Knight, um, or or even a Guardian Chimera with another card in hand, and then that's just swing for game, right there. Uh, you know, Then, of course, we have to have Artemis. You gotta have Artemis to start the rod recycling, because she doesn't have any on-field effects, but she's a simple link one that you go rod, search for anything that you can activate on your opponent's turn, turn rod into Artemis, and then on their turn, even before they do anything, you activate Spell or Trap, and then uh, use Rod's effect, tribute off the Artemis, and then get Rod back in your hands just to recur your resources. And then play the typical Axis Code Link Climb package. Um, so that way then, when it gets to that end game and you can get two bodies out, go to Dark into Selene into Axis Code Talker. I did end up using Selene in one game to bring back a Dragoon. Now, granted, he didn't have any pops, but he's still an Omni Negate. So in that instance, I know that I wasn't going to be able to you know to beat the opponent with just a 5300 attacking access code talker. So went and got Dragoon back, and then just stayed on Dragoon, and that was enough to help me stabilize to then go next turn end up doing a magician, so ended up getting something else with Selene, and then going into Access Code and having Dragoon, which is a total of 8,300. All right, and now we're gonna move on to the side deck. Um, and I made this side deck keeping in mind, what the side deck really does depend on your locals, or if you're going to a regional, you gotta look at what the top decks are, what the counters to them are, and all that jazz. So I just tried to play around what this deck's like weaknesses are, and also the other decks in the meta. Um, One guy's running uh, the 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 synchro deck, So after they get out that junk speeder, boom, space rock. Um, Also, Nibiru does work against Kashtira if they overextend and go into and try to go into something that's not Baron. But my opponent last night, his like third summon was Baron, so that made Nibiru pointless. So I didn't even really side in Nibiru game three, because I was just like, well, if he can just do that, you know. But and it's a pretty standard lineup for the monsters here. I know the one Lava Golem and two Radiant looks a little odd, but it was just something that I wanted to try out and see how well it worked. And in one game, I was able to Lava Golem and uh, Radiant them like on back-to-back turns, and it just worked out really well because the thousand burn damage does matter. People might think it doesn't, but it does, because you can just body block with Dark Magician and Eternal Soul and keep body blocking him, so they keep taking 1,000 damage. I think in my game against the Rika plant guy, he ended up taking like 3,000 damage off a Lava Golem just because he couldn't link off Lava Golem for anything. And then and then for the spells, triple Dark Ruler, two Lightning Storms, and one Feather Duster. The Feather Duster just because for the back row removal. When I made this, like I said, I tried to account for a bunch of different decks, and back row removal. We have Dark Magician innately has spot removal, but there's no board removal. Except for our own board when Eternal Soul gets blown up. So that's why you need to try and incorporate uh, the board wipes. Dark Rulers, I feel like you could also sub out for Raigekis or Dark Holes, because there's not much outside of, besides the obvious unaffected stuff or Baron, there's not much that would make a difference between this and like Dark Hole or Raigeki, and this just makes it so your opponents don't take damage. And when you have that one opportunity to body them, you need to body them, because you might not get another turn. And then the last three are skill drains. Uh, Dark Magician surprisingly plays under skill drain pretty well with the circle, Eternal Soul, Dark Magician, recursion spam. Because he's not an effect monster, so he doesn't care about skill drain. Also, if you need to get skill drain off the field because you're like, oh well, I'm about to go into a dragoon, or you're about to do something else, um, the magician souls can send skill drain as part of their cost to draw however many cards, and skill drain will be off the field, so it won't be able to negate magician souls, so you'll get your draw and you'll get rid of uh, the floodgate, so that way then you can go into your own combos, because skill drain is essentially meant to just stop the opponent on their turn. But yeah, no, so like I had said before, round one was trap tricks, um, the lightning storms and the Harpy's Feather Duster came in real clutch there. Um, and then, like I said, all my games were 2-0s, except for the Kashtira, which ended up going into game three, and that one was just a little bit of a slugfest. a little bit back and forth. But ultimately, yeah, no, it was pretty good. I feel like the deck ran pretty well. I didn't really get that many bricky hands, so I can't complain about this that much. It seemed to work, and we'll see how it does in the following weeks. So, thanks for watching, and Loza, don't roast me too hard.